Hello, and welcome back to Mastering the 8 Executive Functions. We are going to go ahead and get started with the second class of this course. We will go ahead and start with an overview of what we will cover during today's class. As a reminder, please make sure to have a notebook and pen out in 3 sections labeled as questions, clarifications, homework preparation, and general notes. Please make sure to take note of any questions or clarifications that I can provide as you go through this class, relative notes to help you complete your second assignment, and general notes that you can utilize later. We will start with a check-in from our first class and then transition to the content of today's class. We will go over working memory challenges, a case study to better understand working memory challenges, strategies to address working memory, organizational challenges, a case study to better understand organizational challenges, and then strategies. We will wrap up with a review and how to apply what we have learned through a small assignment to complete prior to taking the next class. So let's get started with a check-in from your assignment from the first class. So I wanted each of you to start with the development of your framework. Hopefully you were able to identify the intended use of your framework and the overall outcome you would like to meet. Maybe it was to become better organized or prioritize your time better. From there, you were asked to explore why this problem exists and how it might be solved. Consider what you came up with and compare it to the strategies we will go over today. Lastly, I had you come up with one small habit to begin building using the 3 R's, which are reminder, routine, and reward. I would like for you to consider how you can begin working on these habits you would like to build, utilizing this strategy to combat the challenges you may have relating to working memory and organization. So for your assignment for today, I'm going to have you identify one working memory challenge and one organizational challenge, and one or more potential strategies, and an outline of how you can apply those strategies using the 3 R's, reminder, routine, and reward. As I go through the slides, be sure to take notes to help you in completing the assignment. And as always, if you have any questions, please let me know. All right, so let's get started with working memory. Working memory is the ability to hold information in your mind and use it to complete a task. You use working memory for a lot of different things, but primarily you use working memory in math, reading, following instructions, retaining and applying information, and many other situations. So let's talk about some challenges that come up with working memory. Challenges that come up with working memory include challenges in math, as this subject requires you to solve problems that build on one another and recognizing and reproducing patterns. So you are building up to store information about a word problem in your head, and then you have to use that information later to solve this problem. Think about your experience in math. So whenever you're working on assignments that are focused in math, do you notice that you have certain challenges that come up in completing those assignments because it's difficult for you to solve problems that are building on one another because a struggle you have is holding on to that information. So holding on to a math problem or numbers for long enough for you to be able to utilize them later. If not, if you feel like math is not something that you struggle with, then maybe working memory isn't one of your primary executive function challenges. Another way that working memory challenges can show up also happen in reading, as it allows you to retain and then regurgitate information that you have read. Think about any assignments that you have that are related to reading. Reading is a big part of education and working on, any assignments really, do you find that when you have an assignment that requires you to read information and then answer questions or hold on to that information long enough to utilize it later, do you find that you have difficulty recalling that information later? Another way working memory challenges can show up is in just following instructions and recalling any kind of information. So do you find that maybe when you are given multi-step instructions that it is difficult for you to follow them and remember what was asked of you when those instructions are given? So which, if any, working memory challenges do you see come up? Is math or reading a particularly hard subject for you? Or how about recalling information later that you thought you understood but cannot seem to come up with when asked a question? To better understand these challenges, let's look at a case study. I will be using real examples from students I have supported throughout my career in education, and I'm going to use those examples through a case study, of a student named Jack. And Jack is going to be the student that I will use as an example student for all the executive functions. So although Jack is a made-up student, these examples are all real experiences that students I have worked with have had, challenges that they have had throughout our work together. So here we go. Jack. So I'm going to use two different examples. So the first example is going to be an example in a school setting, and a second example is going to be in the home setting. So at school, Jack is in math class and his teacher asks students to copy down a math equation. As the teacher reads the math equation, Jack is able to copy down the first half but forgets the second half. This results in a poor grade on the assignment, not because he lacks the understanding, but because he was unable to process the information fast enough to answer the question. At home, Jack is working on homework and is instructed to take out his science book, turn to page 50, and answer questions 1 through 5. He follows the first two steps, but forgets the third. Do you identify with any of these challenges? I'm going to give you a minute to write down one challenge you have experienced in the past relating to working memory. This can be something that is a great struggle or something that you would simply like to improve on. You can use a direct challenge I have explained or provide one that aligns with working memory but unique to your situation. So go ahead and take a minute to think about a challenge that you have experienced. After a minute or so, we will come back and discuss strategies. All right, now that you've had a minute to identify a challenge, let's look at some strategies. When working on homework or preparing for a test, a strategy to help in retaining information and applying it later can be to chunk information into groups. For example, if you are studying for a test with 30 vocabulary words, you can chunk them into groups of 5. Focus on those 5 vocabulary words until you feel comfortable, and then move on to the next 5. Mnemonics are also a helpful strategy. You may have heard of fanboys for the 7 coordinating conjunctions. So fanboys for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. Roy G. Biv, 4 colors. PEMDAS for order of operations, so parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction are some examples of mnemonics that you may have heard of. But you can also make up your own mnemonics to help you retain information. Practicing recall when studying or preparing for tests is also helpful for effective studying. And lastly, advocating for yourself when you are not sure of the instruction or how to move forward. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're not sure how to move forward, or if you didn't hear all the information, you can advocate for yourself by raising your hand and asking or clarifying what the instruction that was given. So now that you've been provided with strategies to help support working memory challenges, I'm going to go ahead and give you another minute to identify at least one strategy that is either on this list or one that you have come up with to help in addressing challenges that you may experience relating to working memory. So take a minute and think about some of the strategies that I went over and identify at least one that you feel can help you in addressing any challenges that you experience related to working memory. And if you have one that I did not list, you are more than welcome to select that one. All right, so there are many strategies that you can use to help support working memory challenges. If you have found a strategy that is helpful, please list it in the class discussion board now. I want to give each of you about 5 minutes to think of any additional strategies or share a strategy in the classroom discussion board that you think could help you with working memory challenges. So maybe you have a strategy to help you hold on to information and utilize it later that you would like to share with others. So maybe it's a mnemonic that you have come up with that I didn't list that you have found to be helpful, or a way to prepare for tests that you have found to be helpful that has not been mentioned. So why don't you take a minute to think about a strategy that is unique, but you have found to be helpful for you. If you cannot come up with one, then you can share any other insight or thoughts that you might have related to working memory, or a specific challenge that you have that you would like to hear feedback on any strategies that you feel could help you. So I'm going to give you some time right now to make sure you're logged in to the classroom and add to the discussion board any strategies that you think could be helpful, or challenges you have that you are looking for support in finding strategies or solutions to address those. So I will give you some time right now, and then we will come back and move on to the next executive function. All right, so I am going to ask you to come back to the class. Hopefully, you were able to share a strategy or some insight into working memory in the discussion board. Now we are going to move on to organization. So organization is the ability to create and maintain systems to keep track of information or materials. So everybody has a different type of system that they use to keep track of their information or materials. So for example, I utilize an online calendar to organize my day and the various appointments and obligations that I have throughout the week. I organize those on a calendar online, and I check it every morning to see what I have going on that day. Another example is that I organize my belongings into, they have different homes, I guess you could call them. So all of my, so I have a couple bins that are in my entryway of my home. And the first one is for my keys. The second one is for I have a dog, and I put like his leash and his bags and anything for him in the second bin. And then the third are like my sunglasses and headphones and other stuff I use when I'm leaving to go out the door. So whenever I come in, I keep my things organized by putting them in their respective bin, and I check the bin before I leave to take anything that I need on my way out. So everyone's system is going to look a little bit different, but the system that we implement hopefully allows us to maintain organization and the ability to keep track of our information, like I mentioned with my calendar, and information relating to my tasks for the day or my materials, like I mentioned in my front entryway of my belongings. So let's look at some challenges that are related to organization. So challenges related to organization are generally a product of an inefficient system or routine, which results in difficulty managing assignments, disorganized materials, and misplaced items. Take a minute to think about any challenges that you have that are due to an inefficient system. So if you have a system in place, but maybe it's not quite working because you find that it's difficult to keep track of your materials, your binders, folder, workspace, backpack, bedroom, whatever it is just kind of disorganized and it's difficult to find items. Maybe your items are in random location. Maybe you spend a lot of time looking for items that you will need, or you have to purchase new items because you've misplaced the old ones. Whatever it is, take a minute to think about any challenge that you may have relating to organization. All right, so hopefully you were able to think about a potential challenge that you have related to organization. To better understand how challenges come up, we're going to go back to Jack and see how organizational challenges come up for him. So in the school setting, Jack is asked to turn in his science homework while he is in class. He completed it, but he cannot seem to find it and turn it in. Later that evening, he finds the assignment in his English folder, which he leaves there and forgets to turn in the following day. At home, Jack realizes it is time to get started on his reading homework. 30 minutes have passed before Jack is able to sit down and get working, as he was unable to locate the materials needed to get started due to a disorganized workspace and backpack. He finishes the assignment as much as he can, leaving a few problems incomplete that required specific resources he was unable to locate. So as I went through both of those examples, did either of them sort of click for you where you felt like, oh, wow, that's happened to me before, or I can definitely relate to that? If so, that might be a good challenge to utilize when thinking about challenges related to organization that you would like to address. So let's go ahead and look at some strategies. So the first one is designating a study area. You can designate a study area in your home that has all the materials that you need to work on your assignment. So in a study area, what do you think should be kept there? What comes to mind for me is having writing utensils, so pens and pencils, paper, any books or notebooks for different classes, having a clear space so you're not distracted, maybe your laptop, writing paper, notebooks, highlighters, anything that you would utilize to get homework done. Having a designated study area with designated bins or areas that you put your materials is going to be helpful, because you'll know exactly where you need to look to get started, and you'll know where to look when you need to use different materials or resources, and you'll have a clear, clean area that will help you to get things done that is distraction-free. A second strategy is to conduct a weekly materials check. So going through your materials every week and getting rid of what you don't need anymore, making sure everything is in its correct location, and just clearing out loose papers to help maintain the system. Another strategy is to use color coordination to separate your materials. So maybe all science materials are in a yellow folder notebook, all math materials are in a red folder notebook, and so on. Having checklists or visual aids to remind you where your items go or what you need to do. And then also having some kind of an assignment notebook or planner to help organize your assignments or tasks and identify when they need to be completed by. So there are tons of different strategies that you can utilize, and all of these strategies you can make unique to yourself and your situation. If you think about the strategies that I just went over, all of them essentially are a part of building an effective system, structure, or routine to maintain organization. So like I said earlier, if we all went around and shared our system, we would learn how each system varies from the next. So it is important for you to identify a specific system that is sustainable and works for you. So when we think about how we can apply these strategies, we can use Jack's situation, for example. It appeared that he was without a system or routine that allowed for successful management of himself and his materials. So he was unable to turn an assignment because he couldn't find it. And then later, when he found it in a different folder, he just left it there. So, working with Jack to organize his materials, dedicating a home for every subject and subject materials will allow him to better identify them. And establishing a weekly routine to maintain his organization by going through his materials, say every Friday, making sure they're all in the correct location and that there's nothing that needs to be turned in that was neglected, and throwing away any items that he no longer needs will allow him to identify his assignments when they need to be turned in and not neglect completed assignments that were turned in. Establishing a daily routine of checking his planner to make sure he is bringing needed materials home to complete assignments each weekend, and maintaining a weekly organization check of his designated work area will prevent him from spending unproductive time cleaning and locating items and missing points for not having materials needed to complete assignments or questions. So I am going to give you a few minutes to identify a couple strategies to support you in your organizational challenges. Again, I'd like you to go back to the classroom discussion and share a strategy that is unique to you. It can definitely be one of the strategies listed here, but one that you can take and shape it to support you and a challenge you may be experiencing, and share it in the discussion board that you are going to try to utilize to help you in addressing whichever organizational challenge you feel needs to be addressed. If you feel like you have a pretty good system down, then feel free to share what that system looks like in regards to helping you maintain organization. So I'll give you a few minutes and we will check back in and do a quick wrap up. All right, hopefully you were able to share a strategy that you are hoping to utilize to address a challenge related to organization, or one that you have already started to utilize that you have found to be effective in addressing any challenges that could come up related to organization. We are going to do a quick wrap up before we discuss your assignment. So during this course, we discussed working memory. And as a reminder, working memory is the ability to hold information in your mind and use it to complete a task. So challenges that come up with working memory can be in math, reading, following instructions, retaining and applying information, and many other situations. Strategies that can come up to address some of these challenges can include chunking information, using mnemonics, practicing recall, or advocating for yourself and speaking up when you're not sure of the instruction or you need clarification. We went over organization, which is the ability to establish and create a system to keep track of information or materials. Any challenges that you can experience related to organization are generally a product of an inefficient system or routine and can result in difficulty managing assignments, disorganized materials, or misplaced items. There are many strategies that you can utilize for organization, and they can include a weekly materials check, designating a study area, conducting utilizing checklists or visual reminders, utilizing assignment notebook, any kind of system or routine that you can set in stone for yourself to maintain organization. And as a reminder, it's going to look different for everyone. So for your assignment, I would like you to, hopefully you have already identified one challenge for working memory and one challenge for organization and one strategy to address a working memory challenge and address an organizational challenge. So really quick, I will like for you guys to identify one challenge you have in regards to working memory and a strategy that you can use to address that challenge, and then one challenge you have in organization and one strategy you can use to address that challenge. Try to find a way to utilize the power of habit. The 3 R's: reminder, routine, and reward. So if you need to, feel free to refer back to the first class that reviews the 3 R's to help support you in building a positive habit. And of course, if you have any questions, please reach out. So hopefully you are already able to identify those challenges and strategies during this class. And what you'll really need to work on for your assignment is to find a way to use the power of habit, the 3 R's, to help build a positive habit to address these challenges for both working memory and organization. If you have any questions, just let me know. And if not, I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.